What happens to a person when the group can no longer carry them? Not in a hospital, not in a nursing home, not in a city where an ambulance can arrive, where laws exist, where a bed is waiting somewhere behind a locked door. In the wild, in cold weather, in a camp that has to move before the food runs out, the question is different. An elder falls behind. At first, people help. A son offers an arm. A granddaughter slows her steps. Someone carries the water. Someone breaks the hard roots into smaller pieces. The group adjusts because this person is not a stranger. This is the woman who remembered where the berries ripened after the late frost. This is the man who taught the younger hunters how to read a broken branch in the mud. This is a voice the children have heard since birth. Then the land changes. The animals move. The river freezes. The weather turns. The group has to leave, and the elder cannot walk. Now the question becomes something no modern person wants to imagine too clearly. Do you carry them and risk everyone? Do you slow down and hope the danger passes? Do you leave food beside them, speak a final word, and keep moving before the children understand what is happening? This is not a story about cruelty. It is a story about survival when love was expensive, when mercy had weight, and when every act of care had to be paid for by somebody else's hunger, exhaustion, or risk. The answer, when we look closely, is not simple. It is more human than simple. Today, old age is surrounded by systems. There are hospitals, nurses, medications, pensions, wheelchairs, social workers, legal protections, emergency numbers, and buildings designed for bodies that can no longer move easily. Many of these systems fail people. Many families still suffer. But the idea exists that a person who becomes weak should not immediately become disposable. For most of human history, that infrastructure did not exist. A small prehistoric band might have contained 20 or 30 people. There was no permanent shelter in many places, no stocked pantry, no road, no pharmacy, no retirement, no guarantee that food would be there tomorrow. People moved because staying too long in the wrong place could kill them. They followed herds, plants, water, seasons, and memory. They avoided floods, droughts, predators, hostile groups, and winter. In that world, a person who could no longer walk faced a terrifying truth. They could not survive alone. Aging was not private. It was not something hidden in a room at the edge of society. It happened in front of everyone. Every limp, every fall, every forgotten task, every breathless pause on the trail became part of the group's problem. A failing body changed the rhythm of the camp. Someone had to gather extra food. Someone had to stay behind. Someone had to give up sleep. Someone had to carry tools, hides, firewood, children, and sometimes the elder themselves. The cost was not abstract. It was measured in calories, distance, time, and danger. That is why many people imagine prehistoric life as brutally simple. The weak slowed the group down, so the weak were abandoned. The evidence points to something much more complicated. Across the fossil record, archaeologists and paleontologists have found traces of care that lasted far beyond a single moment of kindness. Some prehistoric individuals survived injuries or degenerative conditions that would likely have made independent survival impossible. Broken bones healed. Teeth were lost long before death. Joints were worn down by age, strain, or disease. Certain bodies show signs that their owners lived for years after they had become physically limited. That survival matters. A person with severe mobility problems could not easily hunt, flee, gather, or protect themselves. A person who had lost many teeth might need food prepared in softer ways. A person whose body had been damaged by trauma might need others to share meat, water, shelter, fire, and vigilance. They did not simply endure because the world was gentle. They endured because someone helped. Neanderthal remains are often discussed in this context. Some individuals appear to have lived for extended periods with serious injuries, chronic pain, or disabilities that would have made life difficult in a mobile group. Scholars debate the details, and no fossil can tell us what a person felt, how they were treated, or what exact choices were made around the fire. Still, the broader pattern is difficult to ignore. In at least some ancient communities, people cared for bodies that were no longer fully useful in the narrowest survival sense. That does not make prehistoric life soft. It makes it human. Care existed. So did hunger. Affection existed. So did fear. People could be generous one season and desperate the next. The same group that supported an elder through illness might face a winter so severe that the old rules no longer held. The question was not whether humans were kind or cruel. The question was how long kindness could survive when the landscape stopped cooperating. Imagine the group in a normal season. Food is difficult, but available. The weather is harsh, but not impossible. The elder cannot travel quickly, yet they still offer something. They watch children near the fire. They repair tools. They remember which plants cause fever, which roots can be eaten, where the water remained during a dry year, which valley flooded after heavy rain. They carry stories, warnings, names, routes, mistakes, and old solutions to problems the young have not faced yet. In a world without writing, an elder could be a living archive. Losing them too early might mean losing knowledge that would matter later. The value of an old person was not always in muscle. Sometimes it was in memory. This is one reason abandonment was unlikely to be automatic. A group that immediately discarded every injured or aging member would also discard experience. In difficult environments, experience could be the difference between eating and starving. There was also the matter of attachment. These were not anonymous mouths to feed. They were parents, grandparents, siblings, teachers, healers, companions, rivals, and witnesses. In a group small enough for every death to change the emotional weather, an elder's decline would not be a cold logistical issue. It would be personal. Everyone would have a memory of being helped by that person. Everyone would also understand what helping them now might cost. So the group adapted. Perhaps travel slowed for a while. Perhaps younger adults took turns supporting the elder. Perhaps children carried lighter loads so an adult could carry heavier ones. Perhaps the camp stayed longer in one place than it normally would have. Perhaps food was divided with resentment one day and tenderness the next, because human beings are rarely pure in their emotions. Care can be loving and exhausting at the same time. That is the part modern people sometimes miss. Supporting a vulnerable person does not require everyone to feel noble every hour. It only requires enough people to keep choosing them when choosing them is difficult. Then a crisis arrives. The season turns earlier than expected. The herd moves beyond reach. A storm damages the shelter. A child becomes sick. Another adult is injured. The old path is blocked. Smoke appears in the distance. Tracks of a predator are found too close to camp. Now the elder's weakness is no longer only a burden. It becomes a danger multiplied across the group. If they move slowly, everyone moves slowly. If they must be carried, someone loses the ability to carry food or tools. If they need constant attention, someone is pulled away from hunting, gathering, watching, or defending. If the group delays too long, the children may pay first. This is where care could reach its limit. Not because love disappeared, but because survival narrowed the choices until every option became cruel. In some societies studied by anthropologists, elders who became unable to travel were reportedly left behind under extreme circumstances. Accounts vary widely, and we should be careful about projecting any one modern or historic hunter-gatherer practice onto all of prehistory. Human communities were never one thing. They differed by climate, food supply, belief, family structure, personality, and crisis. Still, the possibility itself is important. Leaving an elder behind may have happened. It may have happened rarely in some groups, more often in others, and perhaps not at all in communities with enough resources to keep carrying the vulnerable. Sometimes the elder may have asked for it. Sometimes the decision may have been made by relatives. Sometimes it may have been disguised as a temporary stop, a promise to return, a shelter built with trembling hands. There may have been food left nearby. There may have been fire. There may have been silence. No archaeological trace can preserve the final conversation between a person who could not walk and the family that had to keep moving. We do not know whether they wept openly, argued, prayed, sang, touched foreheads, avoided eye contact, or pretended until the last moment that this was not goodbye. What we can know is the weight of the situation. To leave a dead body behind is one kind of grief. To leave a living person behind is another. The people who walked away did not get to stop being alive afterward. That may be the cruelest part. A daughter who had just left her mother behind still had to help carry food. A young hunter who had agreed to abandon the old man who trained him still had to follow tracks in the morning. A child who sensed that someone was missing still had to be kept warm. The camp still had to be built. The fire still had to be protected. Hunger did not pause for guilt. Modern grief often asks for space. Even when that space is too small, we recognize the idea of mourning. There are funerals, days off, graves, photographs, rituals, rooms where people are allowed to break down. A mobile prehistoric group may not have had that luxury, especially in crisis. There were certainly burial practices in many ancient societies, and some were deliberate, careful, and emotionally significant. Bodies were placed, protected, accompanied by objects, and treated in ways that suggest meaning rather than disposal. People found ways to honor the dead long before modern institutions existed. Yet leaving someone alive creates a different wound. There is no final breath to witness, no body to prepare, no grave to visit, no moment when the mind can say, "Now it is over." The elder remains behind the group in imagination, still sitting near the last fire, still listening for footsteps, still waiting for a return that may never come. For the people who left, that image could linger longer than a burial. It could return during quiet moments, during hunger, during old age, during the first time their own knees failed on a cold morning. Unresolved grief is not a modern invention. Neither is guilt. The prehistoric world had no word for many things we now name, but the body does not need vocabulary to suffer. A person can carry shame without calling it shame. A person can be haunted without believing in ghosts. There was another fear hidden inside every act of care. One day, this could be me. Every adult in a small group watched aging happen at close range. They saw strength leave the body. They saw memory weaken. They saw hands shake, teeth fall out, wounds heal more slowly, eyes cloud, steps shorten. There was no modern illusion that decline happened somewhere else, to other people, behind closed doors. Old age was public evidence of the future. A young hunter might look at a limping elder and remember that this person once ran. A child might watch a grandmother struggle to stand and learn, before having words for it, that love does not protect a body forever. A mother carrying food might glance at the person being helped across rough ground and wonder who would carry her when her time came. That awareness likely shaped behavior. In a small community, care was not only compassion, it was reciprocity. The way you treated the vulnerable today helped define what others might owe you tomorrow. Generosity built memory. Cruelty built memory too. A person who shared food, defended children, taught skills, settled conflicts, and strengthened bonds could enter old age with advocates. Someone would speak for them when they slowed down. Someone would insist on another day, another attempt, another way to carry them. A person who had damaged trust might face a different ending. This is one of the hardest truths. In a world without written rights, courts, social services, or institutions that protected people from the community's judgment, survival in old age depended heavily on relationships. Your body failed because all bodies fail. How quickly that failure became fatal may have depended on who loved you, who owed you, who feared you, who resented you, and who was willing to spend their own strength on your behalf. Old age was not only biological, it was social. It revealed the shape of an entire life. None of this means we should romanticize the past. Prehistoric people were not pure. They were not wise saints living in perfect harmony. They could neglect, exclude, punish, abandon, and kill. They could also love with an intensity modern people might recognize immediately. They were not symbols. They were families under pressure. The mistake is imagining that survival erased emotion. More likely, it sharpened it. When food is limited, giving someone a share means something. When movement is dangerous, slowing down for someone means something. When a person can no longer repay the group with strength, continuing to feed them says something about memory, obligation, and love. The opposite is also true. When the group finally cannot continue, leaving someone behind says something terrible about the world they lived in, not only about the people making the choice. It tells us that there are conditions under which love is not enough to produce safety. There are moments when every possible decision harms someone. Modern civilization was built partly to push those moments away. Hospitals, pensions, care homes, disability protections, public health systems, social programs, and emergency services are not just conveniences. At their best, they are barriers between families and an ancient question. They allow a son not to decide whether his father can be carried another mile. They allow a daughter not to measure her mother's life against the hunger of the children. They turn impossible choices into forms, bills, appointments, arguments, and waiting rooms. Those systems are imperfect. Sometimes they are cold. Sometimes they fail. Sometimes they hide suffering rather than solve it. Still, their existence reveals something important. We built a world where the weak are not supposed to be left beside the trail. And perhaps we built it because, somewhere deep in human memory, we know what that trail looked like. So what happened to old people who could no longer keep up? Some were cared for, some were carried, some adapted and remained useful in ways that muscle alone could not measure. Some were protected because they were loved because they were needed, because they held knowledge, because someone could not bear to let them go. Some, especially in crisis, may have been left behind. Not always with hatred, not always with violence. Sometimes with tenderness so painful it almost becomes harder to imagine. A shelter, a little food, a final touch, a promise no one fully believed. Then footsteps moving away into the dark. The truth is not that ancient humans were crueler than us. The truth is that they lived closer to the edge where our moral beliefs are tested. We like to think our values are permanent, that we know what we would do. That love would make the answer obvious. It does not. Love tells you the person matters. Survival asks what the group can afford. Between those two forces, prehistoric families made choices we can barely stand to picture. And then they kept walking because the living still needed them. 10,000 years later, the question has not vanished. It has only been moved into hospitals, insurance systems, family meetings, government budgets, and quiet rooms where people argue over what care costs and who should carry it. The old question is still underneath everything. What do you do with someone who cannot walk anymore? Every civilization answers by what it builds, what it protects, what it funds, what it hides, and who it allows to be forgotten. And the most frightening part is this. A society is never only judged by how far it can move. It is judged by who it refuses to leave behind.